Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I want to talk about the ratings for The Walking Dead episode 2 because the ratings are now out for episode 2, so I wanted to discuss all of that and yeah, just sort of break down everything there and provide some more context to everything here because I've seen some concerns about the show saying, oh, the show's going to be canceled, like why, even renew it for season 3 because, the ratings are already so bad. Like, that is definitely not true. I think these ratings are actually pretty solid here, and so yeah, I do want to talk about it. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. I will be doing my Q&A video after this, so stay tuned for that. But the ratings here for episode 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2 are coming in at 0.497 million viewers. And so that was a drop of about 70k or something like that. Maybe a little bit more or a little bit less. I'm not entirely sure of the exact numbers because I think that for episode 1 it was 0.576 or 67. It was somewhere around there anyways. Actually, I think it was 0.576. And so 80,000, 70 to 80,000 anyway, which is definitely to be expected. I think that after episode 1, premieres just in general are usually the biggest in terms of episode views and all that. I think, there's a build, I think, towards the finale and stuff. So we could see that eventually, but sometimes there's not. I look at the Walking Dead final season. I think the biggest episode, it may have been the finale, but I know the last couple of seasons from The Walking Dead, I think the premiere was always the biggest episode and then it would drop off. And I think the finale picked up a bit, but still wasn't as big as the premiere. So I was expecting a drop, and I think I even said that before. I think that a drop makes sense. And also, a lot of stuff happened with The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2 that I'm not even really going to get into here in this video because I just don't really want to, get into all of that. But I expected some of that to actually have an effect on some of the ratings here. And I think that it actually did. And you also got to sort of take into consideration the story of episode 1 because I think that, a lot of people weren't fans of it. I've seen a lot of concerns over that. Oh, episode 1 is just focused on Carol. I want to see more stuff with Daryl. And I don't know, there was a lot of complaints about episode 1. So I think that is also sort of contributing to it. Again, premieres are always sort of the bigger episode, and I think that all makes sense. And with what happened to season 2 also, a little over a week and a half ago or whatever, I think that also did have an effect as well, but it doesn't seem to have had a big effect on it, so that's kind of good. To me, when I look at the ratings here, they're not that bad, honestly. I see a lot of concerns or a lot of comments of this is really low. The Walking Dead back in the day used to have 3 or 4 million, even going back to season 9, had 3 or 4 million per episode, and now we're at less than 500,000 or about 500,000 per episode. That was 5 or 6 years ago, and cable numbers have dropped so much. Honestly, the best comparison I could say is The Penguin. The Penguin is a show that a lot of people are talking about right now. It's getting really great reviews. I want to check out the show because it's getting really great reviews, and that show on Sunday, and again, none of this is including AMC Plus numbers, and I think that's a really important context to all of this here. When season 9 was out, when the show was getting 3 or 4 million or whatever per episode, I don't even know if AMC Plus was around then. Maybe it just came out towards the end of the season. I know in season 10 I think it came out, but maybe in season 9 it just started to come out around that point. I'm not entirely sure. It was around then, so you really have to look at it back then and at those numbers and be all right, so those numbers were really people were watching on cable mostly, and so now it is very different because almost everyone watches on AMC Plus. And again, The Penguin, a show that is also on cable, it premiered the same exact night as The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, the same exact time as the show, and it actually had less viewers. The Penguin had 0.365 million viewers. And so when I look at that, I'm hey, that show is getting a lot of really amazing reviews right now, but are people watching it on cable? I'm sure some people are watching it on cable, but I think a lot of people are watching that on HBO Max now. So again, when you look at that, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is doing better than The Penguin, right? And so obviously, that's viewership in terms of ratings. Maybe people like The Penguin more. That's a whole different conversation in general. And just in terms of the numbers and whatnot, though, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon has solid numbers. And again, cable ratings just in general are that low. Everything is just that low right now because everyone watches stuff on, streaming services now. I don't even have cable. And so that's the thing. When you look at most of the shows on there, again, you have to ignore football because everyone watches Sunday Night Football, on NBC or whatever. So that's always going to have millions of viewers. I feel that doesn't really ever change. But if you completely ignore that and you look at all the other shows, they're all in the same range, all about 500,000 up to 1 million, around 0.200 or 200,000, that's just what cable ratings are right now. And so I really wanted to point that out because I do just see a lot of comments of saying, this is really bad for The Walking Dead, when it's just I don't know, really, if you're looking at The Ones Who Live, that show had 0.800, right? And they came out saying that it broke records that the show hasn't had in like, what, 6 years, or basically since Rick Grimes left the show, right? Which was, I think at some point in season 8, it was like in 6 years. And so it would have been early 2018, which was around the ending of season 8. Those numbers were around 6 to 8 million viewers, I think. And again, I don't know how they're calculating all this. I'm really just guessing right now. But when you look at that, again, that's why the streaming numbers really do matter. Like, those numbers matter the most. Like, that's where people are watching. And so until we have those numbers, it's really hard to say, you know, how great the show is doing. But just based off of the cable numbers, I can really only look at the context of where The Ones Who Live was at, and it was like breaking all these records and all of that, and then see where season 1 of Daryl Dixon was at, and then see where season 2 is at here for the show, and just sort of compare the numbers overall. Obviously, year to year, I do think cable numbers are going to drop, and so next year, for a lot of these numbers, they're going to drop as well, because people aren't watching on cable, you know, as much. Like, streaming numbers are always going up every single year. I remember one of the bosses from AMC actually talking about this, saying that numbers year to year, like, people aren't watching cable anymore, and there was a reference to what the number was every year, and so it was honestly kind of insane, but it makes sense. Like, I don't have cable. I haven't had it in like 2 years. I did have cable a couple of years ago. I was a little bit late to getting rid of it, but I know that a lot of people got rid of it before that, and so I think these numbers are just going to increase year to year. And honestly, when you look at the numbers here for The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, like, episode 1 of season 1 was at 0.631. Episode 2 had a drop of about 70, I would say, 70 to 80,000, because it dropped to 0.564. So it already had a drop to that. It did pick up after that. Actually, episode 4 picked up to 0.719, and then it dropped again to about 0.628, and then 0.688 for the finale. So season 2 so far hasn't hit 0.600 or whatever. It's been 0.576, and then now 0.497. But I do expect for episode 3 and 4 for the numbers to actually pick up. We'll probably see like 0.500 again, maybe even a 0.600 at some point, right? Like, the numbers do seem to be pretty stable. I would say that, you know, if the numbers hit like 0.300 or something the next episode, then like that is kind of a crazy drop. But when you're looking at the numbers overall, I really don't think there's an overall concern here. But again, it depends on the AMC Plus numbers, because if those numbers are dropping like a lot, then there would be a concern, right? But again, you just got to look at the context of all of it, because you look at episode 2's numbers and you compare those numbers to, you know, the Penguins episode. I'm not sure what episode that was, episode 3 or 4, and The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon outperformed that show on Sunday, right? So I just look at it like that, and I'm like, you know what, this show is overall doing great. HBO's numbers in terms of streaming numbers could be doing way better than AMC Plus's numbers, sure, but in terms of watching that night, you know, on cable in the US, that is totally fine. And honestly, look at Interview with the Vampire. I always have to bring up that show because that show got renewed for a season 3, I believe. And again, by AMC as well, right? And you look at the numbers for the first season, which the first season was very successful, right? The very first episode had 0.622 million viewers, and afterwards averaged about like what most episodes here that I'm seeing are like 0.465, 0.473, which are lower right now than The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 2. Season 2 of Interview with the Vampire, the premiere had 0.282. Then afterwards even dropped to like 0.185. And then there's some episodes here that don't even have the numbers, and so maybe it's even lower than that. Like, that's sort of my point overall, is like, that show got a season 3, and they're doing a lot of other spin-offs in that universe as well right now. So when you're looking at the cable numbers, you really cannot like look at those numbers and think, oh, this is all so bad. It's like really, really bad, because really when you're looking at it, like, that's just what numbers are for cable right now. Like, that's just really what that is. Like, the numbers are lower. And again, I do think that like if The Walking Dead was on right now, maybe the numbers would be a bit higher, because that show, you know, a lot of people watch that show. Like, it's just the name The Walking Dead. So maybe the numbers would be around 1 million. You know, like, I think having the spin-offs, you're just going to have generally lower numbers, because I think that there's people who are fans of certain characters, and so you're watching certain spin-offs because you like that character, right? Like, no one's going to watch every spin-off. And there's a lot of people that do, but like a lot of people aren't going to watch, you know, every single spin-off. And I just think that with The Walking Dead, every character was on the show. So like, it was just easier to watch. So like, when I look at that there, like, it's not that surprising to me. Honestly, when I look at the numbers here, they're good numbers. Like, I really do think that it's just that. Like, they're good numbers for the show in terms of cable numbers anyways. And obviously AMC hasn't really come out and said, oh, this show has broken records in terms of like viewership and all that for AMC Plus, because I don't think it has. Like, we can sort of see that, right? Like, just based off the cable numbers. And that's what I mean. That's sort of what I'm doing overall. I'm looking at the cable numbers for reference to like the previous seasons of the shows and comparing it to other shows airing on cable at the same time and other shows on AMC as well. And The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is still doing better than The Penguin. Woman, Interview with the Vampire, which is a show airing on AMC Plus that just got renewed for a season 3, even with those ratings that were around like 0.100 something or 0.200 something, right? Like episode 2 being at 0.497 to me is like, you know, it's a good number. It could be better, sure, but again, like episode 1 was at 0.500 something. I think episode 3 will probably pick up. We'll likely see the numbers around 0.500. That's my prediction anyways. We'll have to wait and see. But the ones who lived, the numbers were around 0.800, right? Around there. At least in terms of watching, you know, I guess the same night viewership anyways. That's sort of the same thing here with this show. It's the same night viewership. And the ones who lived broke a bunch of records and all of that, right? So I just kind of look at it overall and I'm like, you know what? I think that the show it's doing fine. You know, I think there's a lot of other issues with the show that I would more complain about, you know, like in terms of certain story elements or certain bigger world things that I think The Walking Dead should really do a lot more, you know, like announce another spinoff or like have more crossovers or just like have more episodes and whatnot. Sort of don't have a 6-month break in between shows because it's really hard to be a fan of The Walking Dead when there's not a lot of Walking Dead content to really watch because you're so excited for a season. You have to wait so long. You finally get to watch the show and then it's only 6 episodes. Like, it's just not the most exciting, right? So I think those are bigger issues. The ratings to me are fine right now. Honestly, there's no concern. If it drops to like 0.100 in the next episode, then I'll be looking at that like, whoa, like I don't know where this is going to be going. Like, yeah, we'll get a season 3, but are we going to get a season 4? At this right here, we'll get a season 3 and a 4. And then if by season 4, the numbers drop to like 0.100 or 0.200, we'll probably get a season 5, maybe a 6, but that'll be like the end of it. Which again, by then, I think we're going to get like a Rick and Michonne new story at that point. So the numbers will probably go up. But yeah, so I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.